What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today I'm going to talk about Megalopolis. This is the Francis Ford Coppola movie that I don't know hit theaters this year and did so with gusto, I suppose. um, Francis funded this movie. I mean, he sold his vineyard for this. And like it just gets kind of sad to try to talk about this movie in like you know, yeah, the kind of way where you go, "Oh my God, what have you done, sir?" So I kind of this year's been an interesting year in film. This is sort of like the last uh, of the three sort of grandiose, self-gratifying films of the year. We've got Kevin Costner's first part of his four-part series of Horizon, which was actually pretty decent, but is to be, I mean, we're waiting to see sort of if that finishes, when that finishes. Like, I don't hate Horizon, actually. It depends on where it goes. It's hard to hate the beginning of something when you don't know what the ending is. It's like watching just the first act of a three-act structure movie and being like, well, okay, well, that was the setup. And and then Joker Folie à Deux is 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 almost like, um as I said in my review of it, it feels like a film that Todd Phillips was told to direct a sequel to Joker, and if he didn't, that it would be somebody else. It's a little bit. It reminded me of what Lana Wachowski did, sort of in Matrix of Revelations, um, and how that whole thing, sort of even very meta reference to the fact like if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. So she wasn't really interested in doing, and only one of them came back for the Matrix. So when people lambast that movie, it's not necessarily. I don't think she cares nearly as much as you think she does. So in some ways, I think Todd Phillips, looking at how radically different, I don't think he ever thought that movie could work. But you have to act like it in order to get the kind of budget in order to bury the film so that nobody else ever makes another Joker sequel. He tried to make Joker. I think people just took him the wrong way, and then people were like, "Ooh, what if we make a franchise out of this?" And Todd was like, "What? Did you not follow, did you not understand what the first movie was?" So, unfortunately, the casualty there was Lady Gaga, who came into this actually thinking that she would seriously get to portray Harley Quinn, but nevertheless, now we're at Megalopolis, which is Francis Ford Coppola's fever dream brought to life with $100 million behind it, and a giant cast of just a oddly assembled group of people. Um, Adam Driver, Shia LaBeouf, Natalie Emmanuel, Talia Shire, John Voight. It just like it was like he put it's like he had like IMDb create an algorithm and and pick names. It is one of the weirdest assembled casts in like all of film history. I think DB Sweeney was in this. I was like, I haven't seen DB Sweeney in forever. Um, so yeah, it's a very, very odd film. Um, but I kind of respect it. I do. I kind of respect. I respect the big swing, just like I respect what Todd Phillips. I think what he was trying to do with Joker Folie à Deux, which was to make sure there wasn't a Joker Folie à Trois, which he successfully did. Um, Sometimes studios, they can't get their heads out of their own asses to see whether or not they should or should not make a sequel to something, and they never really ask the question, is this something we should do? So we're not always privy to all the conversations, but I would imagine that was a creative choice and a strong one. So with Megalopolis, though, it's concerning because this is something that France has been kicking around for a while, and then you watch this and you're like, this is the same guy that directed The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. This is that guy. um, and it becomes a little bit more disconcerting because then you sort of get that like end of life phase for Francis Ford Coppola, right? Like he doesn't have much more time to course correct. And certainly nobody's going to give him money to do so after this. So the best thing he can hope for is to dial it back and direct an indie. But even this year with Juror Number Two, with Clint Eastwood's Juror Number Two, he got the opportunity to course correct from Cry Macho. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibility that Francis could have one more movie to course correct from Megalopolis. I think he wanted to go out with a bang because he had been directing a whole bunch of like smaller films, like independent films, um, over the last couple of years that hadn't really registered. I don't think anybody's ever been directly impacted by anything Francis Ford Coppola has done in the last 20 years. Um, but I think it's been a hot minute since he's really uh, directed something of consequence. So he was looking to do that here. He was looking to be like, well, I'll go out on Megalopolis. You don't sell your vineyard to if you don't think Megalopolis is your final film. The question is he willing to let it be his final film? That's where we're at now. But Megalopolis is this weird sort of like quasi-Roman struggle. It's a futuristic Roman thing that's set in modern times, um, that suffers from just sort of like a confused perspective, a very like a lack of clear focus as to where it wants to go and what it wants to say, and who it wants to say it through. Um, Nothing ever seems like it has any consequence, but at the same time, I don't have too much of a problem with that, as that seems to be sort of a byproduct of what he's trying to say about this upper class. And sort of when you watch Adam Driver's um, trajectory from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, um, it's sort of like everything has a circle of life feel to it, and he comes back around. So the fact that things don't necessarily have, uh, not everything in this film has a lasting consequence to it, it matters. It almost feels like that's his commentary. This is an intentional commentary, is that, oh, well, I'm going to do this thing now, but later on it'll be fixed. Just like magically, it won't matter. Um, it has a very broad ensemble, has some really weird dialogue that just didn't work for me, like on any level. Or I was like, he let this scene happen. I just, even from his perspective, like I gave Megalopolis a fair shot, and I don't think it's the worst movie of the year. But he has some really like odd dialogue that the actors aren't even really sure how to deliver it. Uh, just poor Aubrey Plaza. Just, I mean, some of the stuff she's given to say here is just like bizarre. She's just, it's like everybody else is sort of stuck in this like quasi Roman, and she's just sort of plainly just like cursing at people. Um, yeah, the rhythm just kind of loses itself. It doesn't have the same timbre. It would have been interesting to see him sort of write things in some sort of like quasi Shakespearean type, old school, have that Roman vibe to it, that old Caesar thing going, but it doesn't have that. It just sort of has weird flavoring to it. The whole thing is just odd. It's an odd, it's an odd and sort of mystifying cinematic endeavor all at the same time. Um, I don't know what the film looks like, but I'm assuming it at least looks passable. You don't spend $100 million on a movie to make it look like it has cardboard sets. So I'm sure it probably has its problems. I've heard some of the jokes made about certain things, and no, the audio description doesn't translate, doesn't point out the those would be funny. I mean, that would be funny if somebody, but that's nobody's gonna ever be hired professionally to do that. That's just gonna need to be somebody else who does. That's like that's like way down the line in terms of audio description is getting people who essentially are doing sort of like the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of audio description, where they're pointing out, where they're describing the movie, but they're also doing it in a way that pokes fun at the movie. I mean, that would be great, but it would be very much self-produced, and there just isn't somebody doing that right now. So, I'd love it. I mean, I would totally watch those. Somebody who is giving me both, um, essentially some level of functional audio description while also uh, willing to have a little bit of fun with it. No, this is presented straightforward. William Michael Redmond does the narration, and um, I I appreciate though. The thing is, I look at films this year that were just sort of incompetently made by people who had no vision, who were told to, here's a script, here's a budget, go do it, and there are movies that never should have been made, movies that don't work on any level. Rennie Harlan being told to remake The Strangers, right? Chapter one. Rennie could have gone anywhere with that. Like he didn't. That was his choice. That was where he went. And while he does have a couple of things that are different from the first film, he also retreads a lot of the first film. And he didn't need to do that. And he also just kind of, horror is not really his genre. And he kind of just doesn't realize that he thinks he's having to follow these paint by numbers tropes, but he shouldn't. He's not really trying to find his own way. Whereas at least Francis Ford Coppola here feels like he's trying to do something that hasn't been done before. He's just doing a really poor job of it. um, so I look at something like that and I go, well, I hate The Stranger Chapter One because for all of its intents and purposes, it never should have happened and it doesn't work on any level. And it also has the boldness to call itself Chapter One. And I think they actually, sort of like the Kevin Costner thing, they went ahead and shot the other sequels. So I think they're stuck with them. I think there already are chapters 2 and 3, from what I understand. Good luck with that. um, so, and Rennie's is a director who has done enough work. No, he's not the kind of director where we're like, oh my God, Rennie Harlan's one of the greats. No, but he has a couple films in his resume where there's a reason why you know who Rennie Harlan is. Versus, it's hard for me to bring up Tarot because it's like I don't know who directed that and I don't care, and it's unlikely that they'll ever direct anything ever again. But Rennie Harlan has movies on his resume where it's easy to point at them and be like, dude, you competently directed movies like Cliffhanger. It's not like the best action movie ever, but it's a fun one. You got through that. What's going on here? So, it's a lot easier to be disappointed in that because he just he didn't do anything new or inventive. He just kind of relied on what was already there, and if anything, lead into the expected. Whereas Megalopolis doesn't do any of that. Megalopolis is its own unique experience that I wouldn't stop anybody if they were like, I want to watch Megalopolis. I'd be like, okay. Go for it. It's nothing if not interesting. I kind of feel the same way though about Battlefield Earth. Like I don't like Battlefield Earth at all, but at the same time, it's so odd. It's so bizarre. And it's so terrible that it almost bears watching at least one time. Like there's some of these movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's like you can talk about it, but until you've actually seen it, you don't actually know. So Megalopolis is obviously it's better made than Plan 9 from Outer Space. It has more of a budget. It has better actors across the board, but still, I was very glad that I actually sat through Plan 9 from Outer Space instead of just having it be like the butt of jokes and not having any idea of why, and not having any concept. So sometimes, as much as we love to critique films that are, we love these films and we're here to celebrate cinema, we also have to watch films that for some reason seem to have bucked the trend and gone in the other direction as well. But there's something that's about Megalopolis that shares, I would say, the same thing with Joker Folie à Deux, that is, they're sort of like mystifyingly bad, which makes them almost slightly watchable. Like, I didn't hate myself for sitting through this the same way that I do films that are even shorter. Yes, it's long. Um, I don't feel the need to watch it again. I don't feel the need to watch Joker Folie à Deux again. But my first times through with those movies were much more enjoyable than my first times through with Tarot, Stream of Consciousness, The Strangers Chapter 1, The Deliverance. You know, like films that just were like, I don't like these movies, said Sam I Am. I do not like shit with my hand. Um, so this isn't really like an in defense of Megalopolis. This is just sort of like a it's easy to point at this one, but um I think this is a more far interesting fail in terms of what a fail could be than some of the more useless, time-wasting fails. Films that have nothing to say, that never meant to have anything to say, that just kind of were incompetently made across the board, that don't have any memorable performances in it, that have nothing about them that is remotely redeemable. You know, this is a film that he took a swing, it just didn't work, you know. And in some regards, it's actually, because it's such a big swing, it doesn't even feel like when I hated Clint Eastwood's Cry Macho, which just felt like a really shitty Clint Eastwood movie. Like, that wasn't even a big swing for him. That was just a really poorly directed movie across the board. So this is something that Coppola isn't used to directing, and he took a swing with, and he spent his own money on it. And just like Joker, I found it to be weirdly fascinating in a way where I didn't hate the experience. And there are other films this year that I've seen, even films that I would say are better than this, that I had not as good of a time with watching, if that makes any sense at all. Like, it's hard for me to grade this any higher than I'm grading it because I know it's not a good movie. But at the same time, there are movies that are technically better that I enjoyed less. Uh, but there's something very sort of P.T. Barnum about this grandiose experience of Megalopolis. And I wouldn't take that away from anybody at all. So while my grade is, yes, absolutely would fall rotten on the scale, I cannot give this movie fresh. I also just am not mad at it. So, but I'm going to give Megalopolis the same grade I gave Joker Folie à Deux. Folie. And that's a D+. So yes, it's bad, but I've seen films this year that actually anger me. So I don't know. It's an easy target for the Razzies, but I think it's that's just because they go for the big titles, you know. I mean, like, you end up getting things that are in the Razzies that are not even, sometimes that aren't even like near Razzie consideration, you know. I'm just like, sometimes I see a thing there and I'm like, well, you're just doing that because of who that is, you know. It just becomes kind of like, I don't know why, you know. But every once in a while they get it right and they find like a film, or they have some real fun with it, with the films, you know. But I don't know. It's a weird event, but I fully expect Joker and Megalopolis to be sweeping the Razzies this year. Probably Horizon. I think those would be easy targets for the Razzies. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.